What's going on, y'all? I had to come and respond to just something that was even stronger in me. I mentioned it on the PresX pod I had the other day with my boy Rag. This is pertaining to the DayStar allegations and really my brother Marcus Rodgers. And this is no bash video talking about Marcus, no cloud chase, so to speak. You know what I mean? I just kind of wanted to put my thoughts out there in this regard. If people are not familiar, maybe 5 days ago, we was in Puerto Rico and I saw that Marcus Rodgers put up, he had what he called an interview or really a conversation that he had with Joni Lamb and Susie Lamb of DayStar, formerly of DayStar. And, you know, they told their side of the story. Some of the stuff we've already said, they've already said. Some of the stuff I've put out there on the video that I did talking about the DayStar allegations. And so, you know, I thought it was something new for him to do something like an interview or, you know, talk to people of that nature. Because usually Marcus Rodgers is just by himself, you know, giving his thoughts of what Holy Spirit is telling him on, you know, just preaching the Bible. So I thought it was a different look for him, right? And so, and also I thought he was on the kind of the right side of it, given all the information that came out there about the whole DayStar stuff, Joni Lamb and Susie Lamb. But then he came up with a post talking about now Joanie Lamb, the president of DayStar, hit him up and want him to do the interview with her, telling her side of the story. And that's where I think everything kind of went haywire. Yep. And so, and I'm going to read something here in a minute, but I just think even from what I'm about to read, from what Marcus said on one of his YouTube posts that he put out there, he knew he was wrong. He knew that he was going into a territory or on a level to that he was not prepared for. And so, and this is where, just like with anybody, nobody agrees with me 100% of the time. I don't agree with him 100% of the time. Probably I agree with Marcus probably 90+% of the time, honestly, most of the stuff that he has to say. But in this, you know, in this particular situation, I didn't think that he used wisdom in this piece. Not because he used Bible talking about where it says about cross-examination. You got to hear both sides to really see. Like you're right. You're right about that. But in order to do cross-examination, you have to do your homework. Yep. You have to know. You have to know every little detail or most of the details surrounding the circumstance and situation, and not just come to a quote-unquote interview and just like freestyle. You know what I mean? Especially for somebody like a Joanie Lamb that's been in TV for decades. She's been in big time TV and in interviews for a long time. So she knows how to control an interview. You know what I mean? So I just think he was out of his league. And so I want to read something that he actually posted on his Facebook page. Okay, and this is the quote. He says, "Because my integrity is so important to me, I have been here all night listening to every leaked audio, taking notes, going over every piece of evidence I have from both sides, which nobody else can say they went directly to both parties and got." Correct. He probably is right on that. But the thing is, he said this after he did both interviews with Joanie and Susie, and then the latest one with Joni Lamb. So it would seem to me that you would do your homework before doing these interviews, right? And I think he kind of used other pastors as his why he leaned toward doing it, because it's biblically in there. Like that is true. Biblically, it does talk about hearing both sides, right? But you got to have the skill level to do it. Like even to some of the interviews that we have done on this podcast, you know, we have a rapport with those, some better relationship than others. You know what I'm saying? But we weren't interviewing anybody with a scandal or that had some pretty serious allegations out there, right? So it's kind of not the same thing. And so I just think instead of getting too super spiritual about it, like, oh Lord, what should I do? Pastors, what should I do? Like, just look at it from a natural perspective. Do you have all the information? Do you have all the evidence? Have you heard everything on both sides that you need to hear in order to do a proper cross-examination? If not, you pretty much playing yourself. Yep. You know what I mean? You pretty much playing yourself. And he said, I stepped out. I'm right here. Said, I stepped out. What happened? Hold on, y'all. It went away. All right, let's do this again. It said, I stepped into a pool and fell into an ocean. I wasn't trying to be a journalist. I was trying to be a voice for a child whom people said her sexual abuse was being covered up. And so when it comes to stuff like this, I think we have to be careful, because he's this spiritual guy, this anointed preacher that has said a lot. Actually, I made a video about him on our page when I had my pastor, Apostle Wade, on the show. And, you know, we was bigging up Marcus because we think he's a needed whistleblower to the culture, especially to the world and this Christianity, right? I think a voice like Marcus is needed. You know what I'm saying? But for you saying you don't want to be a journalist when you're trying to interview somebody that you don't know, somebody that you have made several videos about, like with the Christian Illuminati, and he had pictures of DayStar and stuff like that being potentially a part of it. He was just giving an example of it. And so now it's like, yeah, you might have to have a little journalism in there, you know, because you don't have a relationship with these people, you know, and these are allegations that is family business. And so you need all the information in order to, you know, make an informed decision, right? We know God judges all. He's going to judge it also, but we have to do our part. We have to be skillful in certain areas in order to make things work. Like, we wouldn't, you know, have a doctor teach us, you know, ballet or something, you know what I mean? Or have a basketball coach, you know, do surgery on us, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, no matter how spiritual they are or how much they hear from God, they have to be skilled in the particular, you know, craft that they're trying to be into. And so I just think he dropped the ball on that. It says that now I'm listening to audios about the car trackers, adultery, and who is going to be the next president, who is Jezebel and who isn't. Like, all this stuff was already out there before he particularly talked about it. And I'm going to play a video in a minute of some of the stuff that he actually said, I think after he posted the Joni Lamb called interview. And I don't like the word interview, right? Because even when we talk on the Pres X with people, like, you could call it an interview, but it's more so a conversation. And so when he says it's an interview, I'm like, bro, with an interview, you got to do your homework. You got to, you know your ins and outs. You got to know counter questions. You got to know, you know, the whole situation. Like the stuff we were talking about with Kamala doing the presidential campaign stuff, like the Fox interviewer that got Kamala that time that I made a video about, like he knew his stuff. He knew where she was going to weave out and how to bring her back in and post this question and press back on this when she says that. Like, that's part of interviewing, right? Like, I can't say I'm great at that or anything, but I wouldn't particularly interview anybody that's going through a scandal without me first doing my homework and just being like, oh Lord, putting this on my plate. Like, no, let's practically look at this stuff, right? Let's just say, do I know my homework? Do I know what's going on? If I don't, you know, I might need to hold back. I tell her, you know what I'm saying, wait another week or two or something. I just think it was very crafty of DayStar and Joni Lamb to choose Marcus Rodgers over anybody else, because I'm sure other people wanted to get that story, and since it's such big news, especially in the Christian culture, but she chose Marcus Rodgers because, you know, he's not trained. You know what I'm saying? He pretty much kind of works off emotion, seems like, right? And plus he has a huge following. So it's just like, okay, he has a huge following on YouTube, and we're trying to, get this demographic of this base right here, and we don't think he can harm us in any type of way, in the way he's going to come at us. And I couldn't even finish watching the whole thing with Joni Lamb, and she was right. You know what I'm saying? They were right. Her people, our legal team, whoever, kind of set this up for her, because it was bad, man. It was Michael Jackson bad. It was no press back. It was, and one of the things I noticed too, he said a couple of things that Jonathan and Susie Lamb said that they didn't say, and presented to her and asked her what she thinks. Like it was pretty bad, man. It was pretty bad. So I'm not gonna read this whole thing. So I'm trying to get down to his official statement. He said, this is Marcus Rodgers again. My official statement: I don't care who the next president of DayStar is. I don't care who spent what on what. I don't care who divorced and remarried, because God will judge all of that. All I care about is whether the essay of a child covered up or not. God will judge everything else, no matter what people think. People are going to argue and debate online, but God will bring what is done in darkness to light for everyone. I jumped into what I thought was a pool and ended up being an ocean. But we already knew this was an ocean, Marcus. Like, before you even, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't count the cost, bro. You didn't sound like you counted the cost. And it ended up being the ocean. And I've been trying my best to adjust with wisdom and following biblical principles. I think there'll probably be it on that. But yeah, it's a lot. And I'm gonna play some of the video of, I think, his interview with Joni Lamb and himself, and also something he put out a couple hours before he actually posted it.
Bullied my whole life. So at the time, I had the perception it seems like they're getting bullied and being silent. So I'm going to use my platform and allow them to tell their side of the story, mainly because of what they were saying, about their daughter. That is near and dear to my heart. I have personal experience with that. And
right.
I've seen it destroy families, and so I felt like their voice needed to be heard. And I mean, God allowed it, and so we're here now. So is there a path to reconcile and restoration? And I will tell you this, Jonathan, I asked him the same thing. I said, is there a path for that? And in his mind, he's like, she needs to repent. That's what he's telling me. And what do you say to that? What do you feel about that?
Well, as a mother, of course, you want reconciliation with your son. I love my son, and but there's a lot of deception, and I will never sit here and say that a lot of the things that they're saying are true, because they're not true, and we have factual information to prove that. So yes, of course I want reconciliation. I don't see how restoration can take place until they're ready to admit that they have said and done things that aren't true. I mean, I'm not going to just sit here and say, oh, well, yeah, let's reconcile, let's see restoration. I can't change somebody's heart. Only God can change a heart. And so my heart is always open for reconciliation and restoration. I do believe that one day that my son will be reconciled to me. Now, I don't know what it's going to take for that, but if you had told me that I would be sitting here talking to you and dealing with something like this, I would have never believed it. So it's just heartbreaking, the fact that I even have to talk publicly about it.
Yes, I understand that. And so, when I talked to him, obviously I did the interview with him, and I looked him in the eyes, and, I talked to Susie as well. There were some very detailed allegations that painted a very vivid picture. And I remember the one that stuck out to me is when I read, he says that, he walks in the room and this guy, Pete, began to apologize over and over again. So either, right, you're telling the truth in my mind. This is your mom. This is the company your father built, right? For you to go to that extreme, it was hard for me to read that and just think, man, this guy is just, making this up.
Right.
And so I want you to just share with the audience your side of that story.
Okay, so in 2020, there was an incident that took place at my granddaughter's school. And Susie called me, and she said, will you go down to the school with me? And I said, absolutely. So we went together to the school. We reported it to the school, and my granddaughter had told her mother that a little boy had touched her and her friend inappropriately, okay? And so that was never written about, that I went with her, or that there was another little girl involved. And so Susie and I reported it to the school, and I talked to my granddaughter, and Susie had asked me to ask her what happened, and so I did, but my granddaughter...
Now, the whole interview pretty much goes like that. The description, I may put it into the video comments, or you can go straight to his page and look at the interview yourself. But it was just, she took pretty much the whole control of it. Everything that she said the same thing on her DayStar YouTube page, her platform, with her girlfriends on there and stuff. And so that's one of the reasons I was talking about it really not being an interview. It was no type of pushback, and some of the stories that Joanie Lamb was even saying, it was coming from the perspective like she was actually in the room when Pete, what they call him, was their Jonathan Lamb, Susan Lamb's little girl, was getting naked in that room, right? She was telling from a perspective. You would think she was right there in the room with her. And so simple questions just like, how do you know that? Like, how do you know what you're telling me? You know what I'm saying? Like, basically, she's just regurgitating probably what Pete, the alleged abuser, actually told her or told them. And so stuff like that was happening. And yeah, it was just crazy. So, you kind of a little disappointed in Marcus because he got hit with a hammer. You know what I mean? And he was not prepared for it. And for somebody that I believe, you know what I'm saying, he never sits in the middle. From my observation, he don't sit in the middle. He's either here or he's there. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't kind of sit, you know what I'm saying, rest in the nest. And so in this whole situation, it seems that he just rested in the middle, and that's kind of odd coming from Marcus because he's always stood on business. You know what I'm saying? When it's come to kingdom, especially, it seems he was very much more prepared for the back and forth he had with Preston Perry, Jackie Hill Perry's husband, more than he did with this interview, right? And so it's just like you give attention to what you kind of want to, and so I just was kind of disappointed in that.
All right, guys, so we got that over with. I knew that was going to cause a lot of backlash, and I knew that I was going to get a lot of hate, and that's why I told you guys in the first place I did not want to go down to DayStar. The easy thing for me to do would have just, everybody was calling me a hero, everybody was singing my praises, but the Bible says, woe when all men speak good of you. If you go look at the interview that I did, right, everybody pretty much was loving me. But when I sought wise counsel and I talked to the pastors and I looked at what the Bible says, the Bible is clear that a fool only hears one side of the matter. And the thing is, you guys can say, well, we already heard that, these people reported it, this person reported it. That's still he said, she said. You cannot have righteous judgment without cross-examination. So when I went to Joni, even though, yes, I got a lot of information late because I didn't sign up for the soap opera. I thought I was stepping into a pool and I fell into an ocean. All right, I was not prepared for everything that came with it. I wasn't expecting, excuse me, all of the different pastors to call me. So yes, there's information that's being put out there, and I'm playing catch up, trying to do my due diligence. And so yes, when Joni first called me, I said, no, I don't want to do the interview because I knew it was not going to be a good look. I knew people was going to act just like this because people just want DayStar and, her to go down. People heard the audio, their minds are made up, and I get that. So I'm going to take the hits. I get it. And so the thing I want to address is some people say, well, why didn't you ask about this? Why didn't you ask about that? You weren't prepared for the interview. Before I did the interview, the reason I went there was to get their side, right? It wasn't even guaranteed that we were going to do the interview. And so I went there, I sat with them in the office, they pulled out this big book, and they showed me all kinds of stuff. Emails, text messages. I'll just give you one easy one. Everybody was saying the lie detector test that Pete took was from Doug. I saw the lie detector test, I saw the paperwork, I saw who administered the test, and it was not Doug. It was a guy who was in the police force. He retired, and now this is what he does as a living. And so that's just a perfect example of why you got to get both sides. Now, some people can say, well, they could have faked the paperwork. They could have did this. I had to see it for myself from both sides. Because if I did what you guys wanted and I just listened to the one side and then it's like, that's it. Well, the reality is, you know what? Going off of what just these people say, there's narratives out there that some of the reporting is not accurate. And so I'm going to gather. I stayed here all night. You guys heard me say this in the other video. I stayed here. I've been here since 10 a.m. yesterday because I knew it was coming. And I said, you know what, God, the truth of the matter is I did jump the gun. I was feeling for Jonathan and Susie. I wanted to give them my platform to speak up. But if I was to do it biblically, I never thought I would be interviewing Joni Lamb. If that even crossed my mind from the beginning, the biblical thing to do is to get both sides of the story. But I never imagined, and to be honest, yes, she probably never would have sat with me if I hadn't interviewed the children. But guess what? It is what it is. God knows my heart. That's how we got here.
So yeah, there you have it, man. At least he admitted that, he was kind of in over his head. He kind of implied that. But again, when you cross-examine somebody, especially if you talked about with the word, you could look at the OJ trial. You could look at Johnny Cochran and the other prosecutor in defense. Like, they did their homework. They spent days and nights getting information, saturating their mind with that information. And so Marcus, pretty much tried to do all of that after the fact, right? So, it's, players mess up too. It is what it is, man. But tell me what y'all think, y'all. Like this video, go ahead and comment. Let me know what you think. And until next time, y'all, salute.